There will be a second panel in just a couple of minutes, but before that, as we presented part of our studies, we thought it was really interesting and important to have the presentation of a study conducted by the European Commission about the European sport model. So I will welcome Matteo Zacchetti on stage to present this study. Thank you to be here, and maybe you can just sit here to, maybe this one. So you have the floor to present the main insights of this piece of work. And once again, I think it's, it's available publicly on your website.
Yes. Good morning, good afternoon, everybody, and thank you for the invitation. The study is this one, and it can be downloaded online. I sent the link, because apparently it's not easy to find it, so I sent the link to the number for the questions, but it's an SMS. I don't use WhatsApp, sorry. So, yes, my name is Matteo Zacchetti. I work for the European Commission, for the sport unit of the European Commission. We are part of the Directorate General Education and Culture. And just to give you a brief outline on what we do is basically, of course, our competencies have grown. Actually, I would say have started in 2007 with the Article 165 of the Lisbon Treaty. We mainly focus on communication, initiative and events in order to improve the participation rate of European citizens in sport and physical activity. You know that unfortunately the participation rate is still not satisfactory. For example, we have the European Week of Sport, we have the Healthy Lifestyle for All initiatives. Then we have a financial support program for European projects. It's Erasmus Plus for sport. And by the way, when Mark was talking about the 1,000 ways that football can be played through a project financed by Erasmus Plus, we helped in the developing of another way of playing football, which is walking football. And that was a project, I think, of the Irish FA, together with the European Football Development Network. And I think it's an amazing project because it really literally lifted from the couch so many people. And and the third pillar of our activities is policy and stakeholder dialogue. We organize every year the European Sport Forum, and we have a constant dialogue with sport stakeholders. We have arrangement for cooperations with UEFA and the European Olympic Committees, but we have a constant dialogue with all stakeholders. And we believe that this constant dialogue is part of the features of a European sport model, the involvement of all stakeholders, and of course those stakeholders that have a real representativity. So last year, actually in 2021, in summer 2021, we launched this study. Consultant Ecoris and Kia, Cairn European Affairs, were in charge of it. And it was, they worked on it at the same time while the Council was producing a resolution on the European sport model. So I think it has been important because, as it has mentioned by many of you, the origins of the European sport model go back to the past. It had already been mentioned in different official documents of the European Union, like the white paper on sport mentioned by Nathalie. Actually, I think, probably we as Commission, we owe to the Council the first mention of this sport model, and actually, a list of features that was made in 2000, in the year 2000, the European Council in Nice under French presidency. And it's quite interesting to read them out because actually I think it's even more complete of the kind of model we have developed with the study. So, of course, they mentioned the pyramid structure for the organization of sport and sport competitions with a central role for federations. a system of open competition with promotion and relegations, a broadly autonomous sport movement that may develop partnerships with public authorities, solidarity between the various constituent elements and operators, structures based on voluntary activity, and then something that, for example, hasn't been touched, but again, the importance of national teams and competitions between those teams. I mean, we've been talking about the closed league, the NBA, for example, and we know the issues that they create to national teams. I mean, how many times we were not able to see the best basketball players at the Olympics. And actually, some of those problems are happening now in Europe with the EuroLeague. And then, well, the involvement of public sector in financing sport, a focus on health, fight against doping, integrity, and the common management of amateur and professional sport, which again is part of keeping everybody together under the same umbrella. So this was basically the objective that we had with this study, is to take a snapshot of how sport is organized in Europe. We know there are differences. There are differences that are, you know, due to culture of a specific country or between sports. It's not the same football or archery. But still, I think our consultants were able to identify those commonalities that can be seen in the organization of mostly all sports. We mentioned the pyramid model. The sport federation are the main governing body. This is especially true for team sports. It's true also that leagues have a role in organizing competitions. Also, in certain sports, they have a role in negotiating audiovisual rights. Yes, especially in team sport, they have a role in the commercialization of their leagues. Yeah, we have the system of open competition, which is generally applied across European sport and universally followed in team sports. There are few exceptions, we know, in Europe. One of them is the basketball EuroLeague, but we have also the Six Nations. And I always wonder why Italy is always at the bottom and they still play year after year. But we say that this is the main, one of the main differences with the American organization of sport. Of course, is true. When talking about NBA, NFL, I think, I don't remember if somebody touched another issue that for me, as football fan, would be a huge problem. The fact of the trading of licenses. I always wondered why the Los Angeles Lakers are called the Lakers when Los Angeles is by the ocean, and actually because it was a team from Minnesota. So you can imagine that's tomorrow just talking about my team, Sampdoria, which is in deep financial trouble, comes somebody and transfer it to I don't know, to Sicily or even Dublin or anywhere else. And that could happen with the model, the American model of sport. I said Dublin because I remember that, not because I have anything against Dublin, but because I remember that at some point when one of the many projects of the European Super League was presented, they were talking about having big teams in Luxembourg, Dublin, Stockholm that could compete. So this is why I came to that. Also, I remember that at some point Wimbledon wanted to play matches in Dublin. So nothing against Dublin. So, well, what we said, it's valid, of course, for team sport. In individual sport, usually you have a ranking system. Different systems are applied. But again, there are mechanisms to guarantee fair and open competition. Financial solidarity, it's another extremely important feature. Those mechanisms need to remain a pillar of the European sport model in the future, need to be reinforced. And the redistribution of the resources generated by the elite has to go to help and support the grassroots level, the amateur level, the talent creation. And also the solidarity is between different levels of the same sport, but also among different sports. For example, the International Olympic Committee, the European Olympic Committee, and the national Olympic committees have these systems of redistributions. You already talked about the redistribution of the profits generated by the European competitions. So this is crucial. But, I mean, for many sports, it's also still crucial the intervention of public authorities. And this brings us back to what, again, was already said as sport as a public, as a common good, as a collective good. Yeah, another feature is the autonomy. That is something that has also been recognized, I think, in a declaration of a committee at the United Nations. But autonomy, sport has to be autonomous. Of course, this autonomy does not come for free. There are a set of conditions that have to be respected. The first is good governance. And good governance, of course, can be declined in many different ways. Well, good governance had not the same meaning 20 years ago, will not have the same meaning in 20 years. And this is a personal opinion, I think that today good governance means involvement of all stakeholders. And a real involvement, not just fake consultation, but being able to include them in the decision-making processes. And for example, I have to say that a few weeks ago, I think, UEFA signed a memorandum of cooperation, an agreement of cooperation with an organization of fans, a European organization of fans. And that, for me, it's crucial because fans, have to be there. They are the backbone of the European sport model, and they are not enough represented in the decision-making processes of the federation. And finally, we come to the role of volunteers. Again, you said that before, and the worrying thing is that I think there is a decline in the numbers and maybe also in the quality of volunteers. I mean, this is probably linked with our lifestyle. COVID had an influence, but this is becoming a huge problem. So also I think the fact that the European population, or at least in many countries in Europe, the population is getting older. I mean, that has a real impact on sport, because volunteers are those who run clubs, are those who help when sport events are organized, and I think something has to be done. For example, in our study, there are a list of examples of, in some countries, for example, in the Netherlands, they are looking at mechanisms of providing training to volunteers, because volunteers, they need to do more and more specialized work. It's not sufficient anymore to be there and just help out. You really need to be competent. So they are looking at providing specific trainings. Also in Slovakia, they are trying to provide a special regime of taxation, of no taxation, to the benefits, the modest gains that volunteers can have when helping out for sport issues. I have to say also that maybe it's something that it's not totally related, but as from this year, the Erasmus Plus program will also have a new possibility, which is basically the same kind of actions for which Erasmus became famous, which is the possibility for students to study in another country. Well, we will have mobility for sport staff. It will be modest at the beginning, but it's going to grow. And I think in a way it could be also a sort of kick to raising, to the not professionalization, but to having a volunteer, to raise the quality of the work of volunteers, and also to give them a sort of reward to what they do. Part of the study is also about identifying trends which could become opportunities or threats. For example, there was, again, I was thinking about something that has been said before. Why there's this this project of the European Super League came out? Well, of course, it's because we said a number of clubs, they want to have a bigger piece of the cake, but I think partly is also due to the internationalization of the audience, because in a way, Real Madrid or Manchester United are not only, the teams of their fans, but are those teams, those matches that are watched worldwide, in Asia, in the Gulf countries. And clearly, for them, European football is a huge success story. I always say that I think for Europe, football is a bit like Hollywood for the US, because it's a very important economic phenomenon, but with social and cultural also implications. So the reason why, me as a football fan, I'm not interested in seeing Manchester United against Real Madrid 6 times a year. But probably some Asian or Gulf countries fans, they are. So this is one of the reasons that explains. So, and clearly this is a threat, while the internationalization of audience should be seen also as an opportunity, because it means making the cake bigger, as we said before, but has also these negative consequences. What else? I think, yes, we mentioned good governance. I think I would say all European federations in the last 10 years have improved their governance standard, but still there's need of more transparency in certain areas. There's a need for a better representation of athletes' interests. We mentioned the fans, and also gender balance in leading roles. And by the way, this will be one of the subjects of the next edition of the European Sport Forum. Sorry. So giving a mic in the hands of an Italian while speaks is not easy, because I cannot I feel I cannot fully express myself, but still. So, yeah, and then there's an important thing which goes a bit out the field of organized sport, but sporting habits have shifted in the last 20 years. And again, COVID gave a big push to that. So there's less participation in clubs, and there are more participation in sporting activity outside formal settings, in informal settings. yoga, Pilates, all those activities, gyms in the parks, etc., etc. So these activities fall a bit now outside the scope of the European sport model. And possibly there should be some thinking about how to bring them in and so on. Lastly, just a word on the case, because we are all there for that. Of course, I will not comment, and I'm not from the legal service, so they would kill me if I say something. But I think what I can say is that this case, of course, has a value for football, for UEFA, for football fans and football clubs, but has a value for sport, because, and it has a big values also for the Commission, because it's, I think it would be the first time that Article 165 would have an interpretation. And if the approach of Advocate General Rantos would be somehow kept, it would mean a sort of constitutionalization of the European sport model. It would open to a next commissioner or a next European politician interested in sport a lot of opportunities to get more into the sport dynamics. So, very curious to see what will happen. And, well, for the moment, I think that's all on my side. Thank you.